Hi campers, it is I, Ledaz, with the squeaky chair. Yes, it is still going to squeak, I haven't oiled it. As I said to someone the other day, you'd be squeaking if I'd been sat on you for a decade. Today we're going to talk about the love-hate substance of potassium permanganate. Either love it or hate it. It is a very useful tool for most pond keepers, not just koi keepers, pond keepers. So I'm going to have a little chat about it and again do some of my myth busting and dispelling a lot of the rumours and conjecture and opinions that some people have. And the first one is that Pervasium permanganate is dangerous and should not be used. Well, as with any chemical that you put into your pond, there is an inherent risk of danger associated with it, whether that be a fluke treatment or malachite and formalin or potassium or just about anything. I think the only thing that you can say doesn't really run any risk is sodium thiosulfate, and I'm sure even if you put that in a big enough dose, you'd cause problems. So potassium permanganate, available in lots of different ways. You can have a pre-mixed NT Labs permanganate solution, very good stuff. When you're using it as a whole pond treatment, you use 10 millilitres per 200 litres. So for a 20,000 litre pond, you'd be using a litre of the stuff. It's about, this one was $27.99 a litre when I bought that one last year. I think I sell it for about 20 quid a litre. As a dip treatment, you use 10 millilitres for 36 litres. So dip treatment being if you want to treat one fish in a strong solution and dip it for 5 minutes. That would be more for treating lice and that sort of thing. Ulcerations, it's very good at treating. It gets rid of all the dead necrotic tissue around the ulcer, which then promotes better healing. The other way, of course, of buying it is Kusuri, the nice shiny gold packet, potassium permanganate. 100 grams of potassium permanganate from Kusuri is about a tenner. Recommended dosage is about 1.5 grams per 1,000 litres. So again, 100 grams is going to do what? What's 100 divided by 1.5? I'll just work that out on the computer while I should have worked this out before, shouldn't I? 66.666. There we go. So that will do you what? 66,000 litres? Something like that. Or you can buy it without the koi tax off eBay. Now I've just bought this one because I've just run out. That's 500 grams of potassium permanganate off eBay, 20 quid. 99.9% pure, I believe this is. Yeah, that'll treat a lot of water. A lot. That will treat my pond at my dosing rates 10 times, and I've got a 25,000 litre pond. So lots of different ways of buying it. And that's probably the most convenient. The Kasuri is probably the most expensive way of doing it, with the inconvenience of having to mix it up, and obviously the cheapest way, potassium permanganate, is potassium permanganate. So you get it from eBay. It's like a very dark purple, dark grey crystal. It's almost like sugar. Do not put it in your coffee. It's an oxidizing agent. It is used actually in medicine on humans. My favourite one is they use it as a foot dip to get rid of like athlete's foot and things like that. So yeah, it has lots of different uses, but in the koi world it's used for mainly getting rid of bacteria and parasites. Now if you look on Links to Koi Health, Dr. Paula, and I have every respect for the lady, she is absolutely brilliant in what she does. She will give you all the downsides to potassium permanganate. The one thing that they don't discuss on there is dosage rates and durations. So it's very difficult to say at what dose rate these negative effects take place. If you look on the Koi Talk episode 7 with Ricky Stoddart, who's one of the biggest importers of koi into the UK, he was having a chat with a guy about fluke treatments, and this guy and Ricky are advocates of potassium permanganate treatments. So you can get leading professionals who do a lot of research and know their stuff who agree to disagree on PP treatment. The same as in hobbyists, you get people who say, I will never use a PP treatment, it's dangerous, it harms your fish, blah 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 blah. You'll get them people that say, I won't use a PP treatment, I've got orphan sturgeon in my pond, it can't be done. Okay, I've got orphan sturgeon in my pond, I treat with PP. You can do it, you've just got to know what you're doing. You've got to make sure your dose is right, and the main reason you can't treat sturgeon and orph with PP, in inverted commas, is because PP strips the oxygen out of the water. So what you do have to do is make sure you have a ton of oxygen, a ton of air going into that pond. And my pond, I'm running 220 litres a minute into my pond through the filters and the bottom drains, and then there's all the aeration from the returns, and it goes through media and all the rest of it. So there's probably more than that. And I've never had a problem with PP in my pond, with sturgeon, with orph. Adam Julian, his channel, if you go and look at his channel, he treats his pond with sturgeon with PP. He doesn't have a problem. So yes, if it's done wrong, it can cause major problems. In fact, it can kill all your fish if you do it wrong. Like many treatments out there, the same as salt can kill all your fish if you do it wrong, the same as FMG can, the same as Fluke Solve can. If you do it wrong, it can kill your fish. If you do it right, it is beneficial to your fish. So yeah, I mean, dosage rates are so variable with PP. People think it's one dose. Crystalline PP can be treated anything between 1 part per million, so 1 gram per 1,000 litres, or 6 parts per million, so that's 6 grams per 1,000 litres. Must admit, the most I've dosed to is 4, and that was pretty scary, and after about an hour I neutralised it because the fish were very unhappy. I generally dose at 2 parts per million, and that seems to work quite well for my pond. Kasuri, if you actually work it out on their packet, are saying to dose to 1.5 parts per million. However, I have seen people using that dose, and after an hour, the PP has gone brown, which means it's spent. It's basically burnt up all the dissolved organics in the pond, and there's nothing left for it to use. Now, to use PP effectively, to treat something like trichocostia, you need it to stay purple, the colour of my jumper, for about 4 hours to be effective. If you want to treat fluke with it, you want it to be active for 6 to 8 hours. So you've got to keep topping it up. If your PP is going brown after an hour, you haven't done your prep properly, in my opinion. You need to get as much muck out of your pond as you can. You need as little organics in that pond, or it will just burn out the PP and you'll be wasting your time and your money, even if it is cheap as chips. So clean your filters, get as much muck out of the bottom of the pond as you can. Just literally give everything a really good clean. Mix your dose of PP at whatever strength you want to mix it at. As I say, I usually do 2 parts per million. That will usually stay purple in my pond for the full 4 hours without having to top it up. If I've missed something, if I've not flushed a filter or something, then 2 or 3 hours it will start to go brown. What I do is I have a half dose on standby. So I'll have a dose mixed up at 1 part per million for my pond volume. And if it starts to go brown, I will just top it up until it goes purple again, for the desired length of time for what I'm treating for. So once I've hit my desired time, I then have to neutralise the PP. If it hasn't already gone brown, I need to neutralise it, and there are 2 main ways of doing that. One is sodium thiosulfate, again cheapest chips off eBay, or you can use your branded pond dechlorinator, which again is sodium thiosulfate. The other one is hydrogen peroxide, usually at 6%. You usually use 25 mils per 1,000 litres to neutralise your PP out. Not only will this neutralise the PP, it will make the water go, and it will add oxygen back into your water, so as a double bubble effect. Kasuri again do hydrogen peroxide, and it's somewhere around £10 per litre. You can go on your friendly neighbourhood eBay store, and somewhere here, oh there it is, I bought 10 litres of food grade hydrogen peroxide at 12% rather than the 6%. 10 litres cost me 20 quid. Massive difference between having a pretty picture of a koi on it and not having a pretty picture of a koi. So yeah, it's food grade hydrogen peroxide. That's at 12%, so it's double the strength of the Kasuri one. Technically only really have to use something like 12-13 mil per 1,000 litres. I tend to just chuck half a litre in and let it do its thing, and that will clear up my pond as quick as anything. So that's basically potassium permanganate in a nutshell. 2 parts per million. I never take my sturgeon out, I never take my orth out. I just run tons and tons and tons of air, tons of as much circulation as I can. Touch wood, I've never had a problem. I've not lost an orth, I've not lost a sturgeon to it. Always have your neutralisation method on standby next to you in a jug, ready to throw in that pond. When things go wrong with PP, they can go wrong very, very quickly. Do not use PP without having hydrogen peroxide or dechlorinator there in your hand. Do not bang in 2 parts per million of potassium permanganate and then go and watch your favourite feature film. You need to constantly monitor the pond. You need to make sure those fish are happy and comfortable. They're not trying to jump out the pond. They're not gasping at the surface for air. They're not rolling over. You know, be sensible with it. Now, I know there's a lot of people that will disagree with this. They will say that you shouldn't use PP, it's dangerous, it's this, it's that, it's the other. Opinions vary. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah. People say you should only dose at what's on the back of the packet. Well, this packet doesn't have a dose on it. So someone needs to tell people how to dose it. Yeah. This packet has a dose on it. Kusuri has a dose on it. But those doses, in my opinion again, are erring on the side of caution, so that if something goes wrong, yeah, it's very, very difficult for someone to go back and say to Kusuri or to NT Labs, well, you told me to dose at that level and it's gone wrong. So they always err on the side of caution with dosages. That's my thoughts. And it's a thought also echoed by the chap on the Koi Talk, episode 7, that they err on the side of caution as a protection for themselves as a business, which is absolutely understandable, and I fully understand why they do that. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that then their treatments are effective, or as effective as they should be or could be. So just bear that in mind when you're treating your ponds. Take everything you hear with a pinch of salt. Yeah, what works in my pond won't necessarily work in your pond. Yes, the squeaky chair is at it again. You know, I know my pond. I don't know your pond, I don't know your filters, I don't know your maintenance regime, I don't know how often you clean your filters. I just don't know. But I know what works on mine. And what I'm doing is I'm telling you what works on mine. If you decide to take that and have a go and see if it works on yours, fair play. If you decide that you don't want to touch PP, fair play. If you decide that you want to do it at the Kusuri dose rate, fantastic, go for it. All I know is that nothing with it is set in stone. The organic load in your pond is going to determine your dosing regime and how much potassium permanganate you need to put in that pond to do the job effectively. If your water's going brown after half an hour or an hour or an hour and a half, you haven't put anywhere near enough PP in that pond. So next time you know that 1.5 parts per million probably isn't going to cut it in your pond. You probably need to do 2 or 2.5 parts per million, but you've got to keep that water purple, and a proper purple, for 4 hours as a minimum. Go and have a look at the Koi Talk volume 7. That'll tell you a lot. Go and look at Adam Julian, where he's treating his pond with PP with sturgeon in, and big sturgeon, not little babies like I've got. And you'll see that he pretty much does exactly the same thing. He's dosing at 2 parts per million with lots and lots of air. To me, the Kusuri dose is a little bit light. It is erring on the side of caution, and most references you'll find to PP say 2 parts per million. So, as I say, take it with a pinch of salt. This is my experience of it, how I do it, why I do it. And why I do it is trick, cost you a pre-treatment for fluke, because it will reduce the slime coat on the fish, which will allow the fluke treatment to be far more effective, and bacterial. I will use it as a dip to treat lice and ulcers, and I will also soak media in it. If I think that it's contaminated with anything, I'll take my media out, I'll soak it in PP, and that will basically act as a reset. It will literally kill everything on the media, or if I'm getting some second-hand media, I will soak it in PP. That will make sure that anything that was on that media isn't on there anymore. I'll soak it for 3 or 4 days in a really strong dose. It won't even be a measured dose, it'll just be pour a load in until it goes really dark purple, and just let it soak for a week and just make sure everything is dead on it. And that's the reasons and the uses for PP that I use it for. It's as cheap as chips. It can be used at any temperature. In fact, I think it's a lot of places with all medications say do not use below 10 degrees. Well, PP I think is actually safer to use at below 10 degrees because there's more dissolved oxygen in the water, and the water takes up oxygen much easier. So for it to work, PP has to take oxygen from the water, so it's leaving more oxygen behind for your fish. It's simple chemistry. The potassium permanganate can only use up so much oxygen, and the more that's dissolved in the water, the more there is for your fish, to breathe. So at colder temperatures, it is still very, very effective because it's a chemical reaction. It's not relying on something like a fluke absorbing the material and eating it. It's actually a chemical oxidization reaction, and the more oxygen there is there, the more effective the treatment is. So there you go, that's my thoughts on it. Potassium permanganate dip for treating individual fish with ulcers and fin rot and all that sort of thing. Mix up 1 gram in about 50 litres of water, so half a gram for 25 litres, and basically dip the fish for 3 minutes or so, 5 minutes maximum. If it's Deutz fish, 3 minutes, scale fish, 5 minutes. Leave an airline in there running constantly. Also a good idea when mixing up potassium permanganate crystals is to dissolve the crystals, put an airline in, and leave it running for half an hour before you put it into the pond. It'll make sure it's a really good thorough mix. But if you're dipping a fish, airline in there for 20 minutes beforehand to make sure there is as much oxygen dissolved in there as possible, and leave the airline in with the air stone on while the fish is in there for the treatment, so that it is getting as much oxygen as possible. And be very, very strict on your timings. Very strict. Don't go, oh, it'll be alright for another couple of minutes. It probably won't be. Not at that sort of concentration. I may actually do a video of doing a PP dip at some point, rather than just sat here talking about it. But yeah, PP dip, very, very good if you've got a fish with ulcers or fin rot or fungus or anything like that. It will oxidize all the dead tissue around the ulcer. It will oxidize funguses, it will oxidize bacteria. It's an incredibly good treatment for that. So I think there's plenty of videos on YouTube about it. I don't think I'd have to do a video. Just go on YouTube, treating a koi with potassium permanganate dip, and it will probably come up with 150 different videos. But this is more talking about it than doing it. So there you go, guys. That's a very brief chat about potassium permanganate. Yeah, as usual, I'll probably get some hate, I'll probably get some love, but I like to show all sides of an argument. If you go and look on Lincolnshire Fish Health, I think her website is, Dr. Paula. She's got some very good information on potassium permanganate. It will give you some of the downsides of using it, and she basically doesn't really like to use it. She's more a chloramine T user. Each to their own. Each to their own, that's what I say. All I know is that potassium permanganate's been used for a very long time with some very good results. So on that note, ladies and gents, ciao.